Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter because, as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. We're here today with Lyerly, who's one of our amazing Fresh Starts experts. Lyerly, before we get into the topic, can you reintroduce yourself to this audience?
Sure. My name is Lyerly Spongberg, and I am a certified ADR divorce coach, a high conflict coach, and I'm also a co-parenting specialist. Also a pre-mediation coach. I do a lot of work in helping clients prepare for mediation.
And you've lived it. You've walked the walk, and you've
I have
talked the talk.
walked the walk. Yes, I was divorced over 20 plus years ago in my 30s, and I have since I remarried a widower with 4 children. So I've had a blended family with 6 kids, 4 grandchildren now for over 20 years.
And the reality show coming. No, and I think it's interesting, though, because I was actually just having, this is not what we're going to talk about, but I do think it's an important topic, that yesterday I was just having this conversation on social media that when you give advice to families going through a divorce, you really have had to live the experience, I feel, personally. And it's difficult. And look, there's great mental health resources and people for everyone out there. But I found the best experience with a supportive system comes from people who have lived it, because you know what those raw feelings are like.
Yeah,
Which
I
brings
think
us
you're right.
to today's topic. So a lot of our content for anybody listening comes from actual questions that we get from people. And so before we sit down to podcast, we check in, we say, what do you want to talk about? And this was actually a question that I got. And I know Lyerly gets this from people. And today we're talking about what to do with that mom guilt when you've left the relationship, but your kids are still in the relationship with your ex. So can you unpack this for us, Lyerly?
Yes, I think it's an incredibly important topic because I think mom guilt shows up no matter what. Very much, especially if a woman has left and believes that that was what she needed to do to be a better human being, to be more, you name the reason, right? But for all the right reasons. And there's this nagging feeling sometimes that her children are collateral damage along the way. And that is a very, very tough pill to swallow. I think especially if you feel that that moms were the buffer or the protection somehow between probably the reason you left and the parent, and dad. And that's hard. It's hard to reconcile. Both things are true at the same time.
Yeah. I always call it emotional triage because that's what I feel like I did a lot of that. It's the literal running around between the spouse and the kids to keep everybody happy and at peace. And then what happens when you're not in the same house anymore? And there was somebody that contacted me, and the question she had was, how do I live with this guilt knowing my children are basically enduring the same crap that I endured, but I got out, right? And how can I help them during this time?
Right. Exactly. Very well said. And that is the conundrum, is that, how do I help them when I have done what I believe is this, this guilty thing? Like I did something wrong by leaving because my children are now suffering and dealing with this. A few ways to look at this is that you are probably a better mom right now. I would say you are genuinely a better mom, especially if you were doing that running around and interference and people pleasing, and I'm in all likelihood making yourself very small for other people. So that reclamation of yourself and your identity is very key to focus on. It makes you a better parent. And I think another thing that we forget when we're stuck in that loop is that our children are going to grow up and they're going to have to negotiate their parents no matter what, no matter how much interference you run. So what tools can you give them? How do you empower them? How do you be a great parent? How do you How do you listen? How do you create space for the transition sometimes, which is very awkward? I'm sure you see this, even with your own children, right? That
Mhm.
space that they might need between homes. And maybe there's a desire to ask a lot of niggling questions, which are not, don't do it. It's like give the children space, and maybe you can really help them learn some tools. You have insight into this person. You know what these pitfalls might be, or the traps, or the difficulty.
Yeah.
So you can listen and be there for them to support them.
Yeah, so what are some tips for that transition time, when they've been with the other parent and they're coming back and they're going to be dysregulated, and you don't want to throw yourself into dysregulation because you're feeling guilty. So from both sides, literally, how do we calm ourselves down and release some of this guilt, and then how do we support our kids through this?
I think it's twofold. I think, especially if it's a newer divorce, I think that I certainly recall doing this on my own, right? I've got this list. I'm going to get this done this weekend. My kids are gone. And then you get the
Yeah.
list done, and then you start to ruminate. You start to think all these thoughts. So important when your children are not with you is building in some things that are important to you. Is there a hobby you want to re-explore? Is there something new you want to do? Are there friends you want to see? How do you create time for your space that energizes you and builds you up to be able to handle this transition, which you might really dread? It might be really hard. And if they're really small children, I think it can be very helpful to have a routine. I have a client who always makes cookies, when her
Mm,
kids come home. So there's something to look forward to. And it's really not about a conversation. It's about allowing them space to do whatever, reacclimate to your home, and allow and invite conversation if it's there for them, but not with questions like, "How is it with dad? Does dad
mm,
have a new girlfriend? What did you do?" But more,
yeah.
"How are you feeling? Did you have or if they share something with you, open to exploration, and that opens the door for them to trust you and to know that you're safe and can support them in whatever it is they're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people don't realize, and I think you kind of alluded to this, but your kids are gonna find out who the other parent is, right? No matter what, and I very much understand this. So what is the difference, in your opinion, between kind of the guilt around the divorce and then your guilt and shame around the co-parenting situation?
Well, I think guilt and shame are two different things, so we need to name that first. Guilt is that I did something bad, and shame is that I am bad. And that's
Mm,
thanks to Brene Brown, who really sort of clarified that. So I think the guilt, there's divorce guilt, and that I failed at my marriage, or I left and I did something quote unquote bad in the eyes of my children, or however. And the co-parenting is more shame, like I'm bad
mm,
because I can't protect my children. And that second one, it's a heavier it's a heavier one to balance, and it's not something people talk about. So it needs to be explored, and you need to ask questions around it. Why do you feel so badly, that you left? You can't, to your point, we can't run interference to the rest of our children's lives. So is there a way to reframe that and say, now I'm more capable of being there for my children how they need me? And this, I think this is more pronounced obviously in high conflict
yeah.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask for that question. Can you take us down the spectrum of, like, just to reassure people, like, not all co-parenting situations are like this. Not all families are like this. So, have you seen kind of the spectrum of, like, families of the kids are totally cool going back and forth and everybody's good and dandy, and then all the way up through high conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I have a client now who's currently stepping into the beginning of mediation, and she and her co-parent right away we know what the schedule is, and we're fine with 50-50, and we're both supportive. And that is ideal, right? So that it doesn't mean these emotions won't come up, but less pronounced. I think
Yeah.
that it's definitely more, it's more serious, and it has, I think, comes with more shame and guilt if there is a high conflict partner, and you feel like, wow, I like chewed my arm off to get out of there, and now I can't believe my kids have to go and do this.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where it gets really difficult. But they will know you as adults, and I think we have this false perception as when we have young children that they're
Yeah.
gonna be young all the time. And the fact of the matter is that your children are adults for far longer than their children. And what skills can we give them? What are we modeling for them? That's the focus. If you can take not the shame I'm feeling, but who do I wanna be for my children long term? and resist the urge to badmouth and all the things that sometimes
Yeah.
we really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I get a question a lot from women, which is, how can I kind of prevent my ex from bad mouthing me to the kids, or, kind of that very early stages of parental alienation that they can sometimes do? I know that's like a whole other topic, but do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, and that is one of the biggest things I try to really focus clients on. Is what is within your realm of control and what is not. And as hard as it is to hear some of these things, by not defending yourself, by not reacting in a way, you are demonstrating who you are. And that is more important than defending something to an 8-year-old. That it's far more important to hear that and say, "Oh, that's interesting. How does that make you feel to hear that?" as opposed to defending yourself.
Right.
And if, hopefully there's an ability to have some kind of offline conversation with your co-parent. And sometimes they're just hell-bent on making you look bad. And at the end of the day, I love that my mother used to say, when you point a finger at someone, you're actually pointing 3 back at yourself. So
Mm,
that is going to come back and bite. In my experience, it will be harmful to that parent's relationship with their child. If it's the dad in that case, if they're bad-mouthing the kid, it will eventually it'll eventually be really hard for them. Kids don't
yeah.
want to hear anything bad about their parents from each other. They do not. It is not
No.
where to go.
No, and I think we'll have you back to talk more about this because I do think it's an important topic. But what I hear you saying is that if you stand in your convictions and your values, your children will know who you are.
Correct. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to do. It's just that if you can focus on what you're able to teach them in hardship and in all this, can be a skill, although you don't want us to learn this young, that will serve them for the rest of their lives. So is there a way to show up with integrity and based on your values and the long-term version of, I'm going to have adult children one day, and I want them to look back and say, "You know what, mom handled that really well. Mom didn't take the bait. Mom made me feel safe. Mom."
Right.
And this is another thing that we could talk about too, is that being that safe parent often means that your children are more comfortable being emotional and dramatic,
Mhm.
sharing.
Mhm.
They're more measured when they're with their other parent. And that can be really tough too. And at that point, you have to remember the reason that they're able to do this is because they know that they're safe with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important and big topic we'll definitely have to dive into. And I will say, from a personal perspective, my kids were 3 and 5 when I got divorced. And it has taken me, I would say, my ex just contacted me again to see them. And I was not triggered for the first time. And that's because they're 13 and 10. And I feel like that age difference, right? They do grow up. And my 13-year-old is as tall as his father now.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, you'll be okay, right? It's like you'll get, and I've put in the work with between therapy and me talking to them, and really standing true to who I am, so they know where I stand in this. But that triggering feeling, it can go away. You're not going to have it necessarily forever.
No, and it does take time. It takes time, and it
Yeah.
also, and I'm sure in those in those, now I have adult, very adult children in their late 20s, and I'm able to go and do things with their dad, and I want them to know that I can. I mean,
Yeah.
I want them to know that we love them and that they're the most important thing. It is not about us when it comes to our children.
No.
And I want them to have a great relationship. We all should want
Yeah.
to nurture the relationships because kids need both their parents.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. And I think it's a big moment, and to talk about that. You, for many people, do get over that kind of, and time does help. It really does.
It
I
does
mean,
help.
even parents were the same way, and now they're fine, and so yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think we don't want to give time as the answer for so many things because it's slow, but unfortunately, that really is the answer to a lot of this.
I think it's time, and it's also really, if I always tell my clients, who do you want to be as co-parents, and
Yeah,
that's who do you want to be as co-parents for you. How do you want to look back and say, I handle this, and who do I want to be for my
yeah.
children?
Yeah.
And hopefully that answer is someone that they can trust, someone that they always know they're safe with, someone that they can tell,
Yeah.
whatever they need to get out, they can trust me with that. And that comes with, it's not easy, but it
No.
over time, that reinforcement and that calmness, if you can bring it, and the understanding and the what can I control? What can I not control? I can't
Yeah.
control what someone else says about me. I can't control that. I can't control what's said to my children, but I can control how they feel in my home.
Mm. So if somebody's listening to this, Lyerly, and they're feeling like steeped with all of these feelings of just, maybe I made the wrong decision and my children are in it now and all of this, how can you help them unspiral?
Well, again, it's that control thing, and this is another piece we didn't talk about too. Sometimes you need to give dad, in this case we're talking really moms and dads, space to be a good dad. And I think in this dynamic often that we're talking about, when mom has run all this interference, is that maybe dad hasn't had an opportunity. And let him try, and you might be surprised, instead of just constantly sort of like going to, catastrophizing everything
Yeah.
that can happen. And so I think it's really important to consider that, and to consider, and the double-edged sword is, wow, he's doing great, he's a great dad now. Why did it take
Right.
place? But that's a separate topic. So I think it's really important. What I would say to that client is to, who do you wanna be here? Who do you want your children to know that you were? And they will grow up, and they will become adults, and they will have questions, and they will look back, and you're teaching them now how to deal with conflict. You're teaching them now, you can give them amazing skills by demonstrating the right behavior here. So it hurts. Those things hurt. Comments hurt, and it's horrible to have your kids come home dysregulated or throw a tantrum or scream and yell, "I don't wanna go," and feel like you have to make them. It's heartbreaking, and it can be, um, beneficial to them to learn how to deal with all these things as well.
Before we let you go, I wonder though, I'm listening to you from the perspective of a mom that's gone through this. How do you sit with that feeling of your kid was just screaming and crying and, "Mommy, please don't make me go. Please don't make me go." And you're like, "No, you're gonna have a good time. It's great. You're gonna" and you know that you just wanna die inside. Like,
Yeah.
how do you deal with yourself in those moments, Lyerly?
I think it comes back to, I think it's important not to say you're gonna have a great time, because you don't know that, right? So you have to be really realistic in the moment and say, you can say the things that you know are true, and you can reinforce those. We're mommy and daddy live in two homes right now, and we both love you, and we want to spend time with you. And I know this transition, I know this is hard. I know that this going back and forth is hard right now. And I'm here to help you talk through that. How age appropriately. What does that
Mhm.
look
Mhm.
like? And so it's really just that this is a reality, and we're all adjusting to this. This is something that this is hard for all of us. And those words, and those what you can share changes as your children get older. And again, it comes back to, if this decision has been made, and either you decided to do it, or the decision was sort of made for you, if you will, this is reality, and this is what this is going to be. So some radical acceptance in there, which is another great topic.
Mhm.
And this is how things are. So again, how do I want to show up for my kid? Do I want to be completely stressed out every time they leave, because they're going to pick up on that?
Yeah.
So how do I calm myself, do the best I can, and if I want to scream in a pillow and hit stuff when they leave, that's okay. What do they need from me right now?
Yeah. And that they know that you will still love them and be honest and true with them to the capacity that you can be. You're not you're not abandoning them, which is
You're
one of
not
my big
okay,
fears.
and they need to hear too, like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, I want you to have a great relationship with your dad. It's
Right.
okay to love
Right.
your dad. It's
Right.
okay to have a good time over
Yep.
there.
Yep.
There's some loyalty binds that happen too with
Yeah.
that age when they're young.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely dealt with that as a kid, for sure. And it's so hard. And if you're listening to this and you're in that stage, it is so hard and we see you. Lyerly, what do you do with people? If people are interested in working with you, how can they reach out?
They can find me, the best way is on my website, which is stepupwithlyerly.com, which is gonna have a new look and feel very
Ooh.
soon. And on my Instagram, where I try to share some of these sort of reflections and, advice, if you will, or just to be there to share sort of my thoughts and on divorce and some of the things that going through it brings up. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and so that's sort of the best way to find me.
And of course, you can go to the link in the show notes and click over to Lyerly's profile and see all the things about her. Get in touch for her free consult. We appreciate everything that you say. I learn something every time that you talk to me. So I'm just so grateful for you and your wisdom because I literally am like walking away like, okay, because I'm gonna have to be going through this soon. I'm like, I heard what she said and I'm gonna take that into account. And if anybody's listening to this and needs the support, reach out to us. We will connect you to Lyerly. We appreciate you so much and we can't wait for the next convo.
Well, thanks. And there's one last thing I want to say in closing.
Yes.
Don't confuse that grief is failure. That those are not the same thing. There's this grief part that comes in here too, which is grieving of the divorce and grieving of the relationship and the dream of the nuclear family. That's different than failure. And those, that needs to be honored. So that's really important to remember that too.
Yeah, I like how when you come on one podcast episode, we spawn about 25 others. So stay tuned for more from Lyerly. Thanks, Lyerly.
Thanks so much, Olivia. Always great to talk to you.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.